Hello and welcome to another edition of Video Games to the Max. I am your host, Sean Garmer, and here with me today is Steve Esposito, Senior Editor of Season Gaming. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Man, I'm very grateful for you to be on here, and I mean, we both just had a holiday here, Father's Day. How did it go for you,
Yes, we
man?
did. It went very well. I had some good food. My kid got me a Lego set, Star Wars Lego set, so I can't really ask for anything more. So, how
Yeah,
was yours?
mine was pretty great, pretty chill because Sundays is my off day for the weekend. So I was like totally exhausted from on Saturdays. I work at 7 in the morning. So I'm
Oh,
like going to bed at like 1 a.m., getting up at 6 something. It was my last day in the office. We started work from home today and
oh,
permanent, thankfully. So now, if I want to move around, go somewhere outside of Miami because it's super expensive to live here, you would know that being in New
oh,
York
yeah.
too. But yeah, it's crazy, and so it was nice to like just be able to chill. She loves horror movies, and I'd never seen The Shining or Doctor Sleep, so we watched those.
Oh,
And
those are
she gave
good.
me a Star Wars thing too, like a cool. Just
Oh,
she made it herself. She's very creative, and so she just maybe this like really simple like card that she made herself. So I was like, that's awesome. I was very happy, trying not to cry. So
oh,
you know how that goes. But
yeah.
yeah, man,
And
one of
my
the best things in life to get to be a dad.
it's at first my wife and I were very like, oh, we're not gonna have kids, and then things happened, and it's been a really rewarding experience. Like, a lot of people are like not really into kids, and I get it, but one day, it is. It's an, I don't know, it's a trade. It's like any it's like any Soulsborne game. There's a lot of risk,
Right.
but the reward is so good. That's the way I
Yeah,
look
my daughter says that now. She's like, I don't want to have kids. I don't want that. And I'm just like,
at
okay, you're 12. Let me know when you get older
it.
how that goes. You always say that, and then for one,
Yeah.
you can't always decide that for yourself, and like what
No,
happened to
no.
me. And then number two, it's a huge blessing that you don't appreciate until it's actually there. So don't
Yeah.
discount that.
Yeah. And like mine's 3. So she's a little young, talks very well for a
Yeah,
3-year-old, I feel. Especially when she's trying to make a point in certain things, how
you're right.
toddlers get. But yeah, it's like no matter how prepared you are for like parenthood, you're never prepared for like the
Oh
wild
no,
things.
definitely not. Doesn't matter how many books you read, how much
Uh-huh.
your significant other they've had kids before tell you until you have that experience yourself. It's not. It's a whole different deal.
Yes,
But
especially.
I'm sure that many of you are fathers out there or mothers. Y'all just went through Mother's Day last month as well. Um, Thank you for listening and or watching, and we'll get into the housekeeping in just a second. But let's talk about what we're going to be talking about on this show. More of that Final Fantasy 16 demo. I've actually finished it. Did you finish it, Steve?
I I did finish the story. I
Okay,
didn't realize that there's a second part to the demo, and I've been meaning to get to it, but like I just couldn't.
right.
And I thought it was very good. Like, it was a game I was gonna put on my backlog and be like, okay, I'll wait till it hits because I'm a big PC guy.
Yeah,
But I'm kind of like, you know what? Maybe I don't know. I don't know. We gotta see how it works out. But after that demo, I've never played a Final Fantasy game like that.
yeah.
Like, I very Game of Thrones stylish. Like, they went kind of. It's almost like they took. If George R. R. Martin was revealed to be like a writer for this, I would not be surprised. I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's some secret credit that we don't know about, but
Yeah.
we'll get into the specifics on that. We'll talk about some fallout from the Summer Game Fest. Maybe Steve get some thoughts on the showcases there, and some other things that we'll get into all after this.
are listening to Video Games to the Max.
All right. Well,
Love that
again,
intro.
yeah. I'm actually, it's weird because I'm not a like big Zelda person, but it's the respect, right? It's the like that being around from even before, like right around when I was born, when my brother was playing games and introducing me. I remember watching him, and I'm like, the music is awesome. Doesn't matter if I'm not like the biggest fan of the games. I can't hate the music. So I was like, when I found that, I was like, I got to use this.
As a musician in my past life, and like being involved with music and stuff, and listening to like the chiptune bands and whatnot, it's huge respect for any musician out there who can do it.
Oh man, for sure. Like sometimes I look at that and you go back to those speaking of Final Fantasy, watching, stuff of like the old Final Fantasies and things like that.
Oh yeah,
Of
the
like
concerts.
how Uematsu was able to get those freaking soundtracks on between 1 through 3 is ridiculous to me still.
That's the one thing with Final Fantasy is I feel like that's the music is one of the key components, even for like Legend of Zelda. I think like those two games, like Legend of Zelda, Final Fantasy, are best known for like their wide breadth of music and how eclectic each song could sound, and like how the tones still kind of carry over through each and every game. They're both music wise, no one can beat those two games for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Final Fantasy, I've even gone to one of the concerts in the past, when I was younger, because I love that music so much. It's just like you said, not only do they carry the themes forward, how each game sounds different and amazing at the same time,
Yeah, and like they hit like the right notes, like the victory music.
Yes.
Like it's perfect.
And the like melody theme that they have almost at the beginning of all of them, it's just like, okay, it's Final Fantasy time. Like let's get it rolling.
Yeah. My wife brought me to the Legend of Zelda Symphony a couple of times in Madison Square Garden. We went twice, I believe, and it was great show both times.
Oh man, and then being at the garden too, that's got to be a really cool experience.
Yeah, it wasn't like the huge garden room, but it was like they have like a smaller room.
Okay.
But even the small room is still like gigantic, and it was a great time. Like we thought, we're like, hey, this room is small, and I ended up being at a different concert at that same room, and I was on the floor. I was in the pit area, and I looked around. I'm like, no, this place is gigantic. This is a big place. So it was fun. That show was great. Both great shows, actually.
That's awesome. I love hearing about I think they said they're going to take Sonic on the road with their music, and they have some fantastic music too, and it's like I love seeing that more video games having their music out there for more people to listen to in that kind of setting. Is great,
and it's being integrated into like big like pop bands. Like Churches is very big on video games, and you can hear that inspiration. And I can talk about this for days because I'm a music head. So.
I mean, video games they got a Grammy now, so it's like I'll be interested to see when they actually have the time to go through this entire year. Not like the first one where it was kind of like, let's just take like 5 games that kind of have a name and slap them on there. I mean, not that Valhalla didn't deserve it. I'm just saying, this year it feels like, okay, you actually have to go through the releases and decide something. Like, how could you not have Zelda at the end of the year when they're doing these Grammys? They better have Final Fantasy and Zelda on that list, because that's going to be crazy if it's not.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially with like, I'm not big in the classical scene, but like with like classical not really hitting the mainstream, but video game music is like you can't turn a blind eye.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure, but I mean, since we're already talking about Final Fantasy, I guess let's start there with what you've been playing. You did say you played, I guess, the prologue, the part that actually goes on to the game that comes out in a couple of days. It's crazy to say because I feel like I've been waiting the whole year for June 22nd to come. It's finally there, and now like after you played the demo, you said you haven't played a Final Fantasy game like that. What's your hype level now after you played that?
So I have this thing that I go through, being a senior editor, and like I'm if I'm reviewing a game, I get really hyped for it. I build it up. I did not do that for Final Fantasy 16 at all. I wasn't even going to play the demo originally. I was going to be like, okay, let's just wait for the game to come out and I'll just play the whole thing one shot. And I'm glad that I went against that. Because man, like the story beats are real good. Like, yeah, the demo is mostly like a movie, I feel, but it's a perfect introduction. Like you get this taste, you get this little flavor of it, and it's just like, it's so good. It was so good. I think the acting is fantastic. The fact that they have real actors coming in to do it, some really great voice actors coming in as well. It flowed really well. And then the combat, at first the combat I thought was kind of off, and then I realized like there's rings that are automatically equipped, so you have to unequip them to actually get a full feel of how the combat works. And that's when I was like, okay, I see what you're doing and I like it. And yeah, like 15 came close. Like every Final Fantasy game I played feels like it was a build up to this moment where you had, I'm even gonna say, Kingdom Hearts 3, which was good, but it was too handholdy, I felt. And then we had 7 Remake, which was good, and then this kind of adds on to what 7 does. Like it's a stronger feel, and I really enjoyed my experience with it, and I can't wait for the full game. I really can't. It's like I said, I just got to figure out when to start it, because when I start it, I'm probably not going to stop. So, and I know it's a mature rated game, which is the first for Final Fantasy. So I'm very excited to see where this goes, and I hope my kid will let me play it. So
I hope so for you too, man. That's always rough when you got the young kids and you're gonna play something mature, that you don't expose them to something you don't want to, especially because it's not just mature in the violent way, it's mature in other ways as well. So which is different it definitely goes with the Game of Thrones thing, right?
I was
I can't believe he said he made everybody watch the entire series while they were working on it.
There is something about that studio, especially because I think Yoshi P is also the producer or director of this one. Yes. And he's very big on like making sure his team is up to snuff on whatever it is they're working on. With Final Fantasy 14, he made his team play World of Warcraft. Like they played World of Warcraft, and he was just like, I don't want to do this exactly, but I want to make it like this. And that made his team better, especially with the whole the rebirth situation where like the game came out and it failed like awfully. I played it. It was bad. And then when he did a Realm Reborn, it was just so much better, more streamlined. And it's because he made sure his team did the work that was necessary to like make it work, and it shows. And because of him, I have full faith in 16. So I'm like, yeah, you kind of deserve my $70 at this point. You did a great job with everything else.
Yeah, man. I mean, thinking about it, like how much, like you said, they were able to change what people thought of Final Fantasy 14 just because they took what was great about WoW and other MMOs and said, okay, let's build that into this. And then now it's like the leading MMO out there. Like, and take that one team and have them work on this. It's like incredible, And you were talking about the voice actor. I don't know if you've seen the guy that voices Clive. He's like been everywhere this week. And Ben Starr, he's been like on every podcast or one of the the big guys like Kind of Funny or GameSpot and all that. It's cool to see like that he and by extension, Clive, kind of a lot of people were upset that that's his name, Clive, and then it's like all of a sudden, I don't care about the fact that his name's Clive. This dude's too cool.
That's the least of my complaints. Like actually, let me take that back. If I complain that the guy's name is Clive, that's pretty good. Like I could complain about other things, but no, we're gonna stick to Clive. But that just kind of comes with the territory. That's kind of what they're going for. A lot of the names are related to, like, I believe Clive is a British name. So I
Yes.
think they're kind of tying it in with that whole universe because once again, the Game of Thrones situation. So, I'm trying to center myself, and I really can.
You're good there. You're good there. I try to do the same thing, but it's hard sometimes because you're like looking at the camera from one way, and it's like, wait, the camera's actually looking at me the other way. So,
Yeah, I also have this ultra wide monitor, so it's like I'm
oh
looking.
yeah.
It's crazy.
So I mean, like, did you? I mean, obviously, we knew going in it was going to be more like, I guess, Devil May Cry and all that. More like, I guess, the God of Wars that have come out. Does it still feel like a Final Fantasy game to you, or are you in that realm of like, oh man, this is just totally different?
Well, the thing is, I feel like this kind of combat has been front loaded way in advance. Like
Right.
Square was pretty straightforward, being like, "Hey, not everything's gonna be turn based." I think 10 was like the last one. They're kind of like, "Okay,
Yeah,
this is the
10 was
last
the
one we're
last
doing."
one.
Yeah, they're like, "This is it for turn based." They're like, "We're done." And then 11 was
11 was the
kind of like the weird.
MMO.
Yeah,
Yeah.
11 was the MMO. Yes, 12 was that Gambit system.
Yeah,
And they're
which
like,
was also with the MMO type where they're kind of just attacking and you're watching them.
yeah, it was
13 was the last one where they had that sort of like,
that's
oh, here's where we're gonna be going. This is so fast it doesn't feel like turn-based, but it sort of
yeah,
is. And then all of a sudden we went full, okay, we're trying to really go action here.
yeah, because they even experimented on their non-Final Fantasy games with like Kingdom Hearts. They expanded on that combat system a little bit. They did a lot of work into like building up to 16. So I'm not surprised in the slightest that they went to this direction, and it makes sense because that's what's kind of, I don't want to say that's what's in, but that's what's in. A lot of purists want the turn based, but there's a lot of people who are just really not into that, and they're just like, okay, well, let's try it out, let's see what it goes, and it works. That's the thing. If it didn't work, who knows? But it does, so I can't really say anything.
Yeah, and I felt like I'm one that, like, I love action games, but I'm gonna say the first off, I'm not like the one that gets the highest scores or whatever. I work with what works, and the fact that I didn't need the rings, like the dodge is actually done well enough on normal that you can get a feel for when you should and when you shouldn't. I'm not gonna lie, I almost died playing the boss that you play in the combat demo. She got me really close, but I was able to, do one of those like last ditch things and kill her at the end. But I like the fact that it's like challenging, but not Dark Souls. Like, oh my god, I feel like I'm bashing my head against the wall kind of thing either.
Yeah, because I also kind of noticed that the Soulsborne games are kind of like now they're slowly becoming the default. I feel
right. Mm-hmm.
Like across it's implemented. Other games like Star Wars Jedi Survivor has that now,
right?
Where they are, they're bringing in that kind of combat style, and I feel like Final Fantasy doesn't want to go that route. So they're kind of like, hey, let's do something different. Let's do something a little bit old school because Devil May Cry is that kind of old school combat, and it works. They pulled it up, they made it more modernized, and I want to see how this works in the full game where we actually have like all these abilities that we can add on to it, because that's what really excites me about this.
Yeah, I do want to see where the story goes as well, because the icon battle thing looked awesome. I mean, some of that's probably going to get kind of old because it is a little bit like trying to just kind of get you through it. But I actually didn't understand a certain part, and I didn't know you could actually like fail. And I failed the first time.
Oh yeah.
Where I didn't hit Ifrit in a certain spot or whatever, and he actually blew the Phoenix's face off with his fire or whatever. And then it's like, oh, game over. I was like, what? Okay.
Oh yeah, at the beginning, right? Because I had the same situation. I was like, oh, I'm playing now.
It kind of just goes seamless into that, and I was like, oh wait, I'm actually controlling the Phoenix now. Okay.
Yeah. I had the same feeling. I was like, oh, we're starting. Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's what's so good is like the Senate. Normally, when you have that many cutscenes after a while, it kind of goes like, "Oh, all right, whatever."
Yeah.
But these are so good that like you kind of get stuck watching it and then go, "Oh crap, I'm supposed to move now." So,
Yeah. Usually there's an indication, and then this game was just
yeah,
kind of like, oh, it just assumed you held the controller, not like got up to grab
yeah,
popcorn or something. But it's with the demo, the graphics Titan, like just the Titan
yeah.
Leon. I can't remember the name of them or what they are, but they're that model. That was like I was taking pictures with the PlayStation screenshot button like every 2 seconds. I was like, all right. This is awesome. This is
That
awesome.
was me too. I'm like, okay, I know my thing's gonna tell me that it can't upload the picture because it's full or whatever, but I'm gonna keep doing it because this is so good.
Oh man, yeah, it was real good.
So I mean, look, we're both getting ready for this game to come out in a few days. I'm sure all of you guys are as well. I keep seeing this one guy on Twitter who's just constantly freaking hyping up this game. I can't remember his name right now, but he's like a content creator for Final Fantasy, I think, and he's constantly talking about how much he can't wait for this game. So I know a lot of people are doing that. Only a few days away, and it's going to be great. But I mean, you've been playing another game that recently came out that people have been hyped about as well, Diablo 4.
Yes, I've been playing that a bunch. Interestingly enough, I'm playing it on my PC and I'm also playing it on my Steam Deck because just like it's a magical
How is that
device.
on Steam Deck?
It works so good. Like I'm kind of upset that Blizzard is not really embracing the handheld as much as they could. Like I know the ROG Ally, it'll just work because it's a Windows machine, but
Right.
using some like Linux backdooring and using like the desktop mode allowed me to put it on my Steam Deck, and it's like the perfect little device to like not little, it's huge, but it's the perfect device for me like sit on the couch and kind of play while the kid watches TV or something, and like I'm just killing zombies and skeletons while she's doing her thing. So it's perfect for that, and even like medium settings, the game runs really well. So, but yeah, Diablo 4, I'm really liking it. I played the Barbarian. I got kind of bored, so I jumped over to the Rogue, who I'm really enjoying with my my ranged build currently. And I'm level like almost 30 on 2 characters, so I haven't gotten to the end yet, but I'm building towards it.
So you're like in like Act 3 or 4? Or...
So funny enough, I just started Act 2.
Okay.
Only because like I'm the kind of guy who's like, you give me this kind of world and there's a huge sprawling map and there's things to explore. And if I'm like, hey, that's right there, I'm just going to go look at that. And it's like, oh, okay, hold on, there's a live event over here. Let me go to that. So I totally get sidetracked, like completely. Like I'm not reviewing the game, so there's no rush for me to get anywhere. So I'm just kind of like, oh, there's that thing. Let me go check that. Oh, there's that thing. And then lo and behold, before I even get to like the crescendo of the act, I'm like 10 levels above like what it wants me to be. And I'm like, oh, okay, my mistake, my bad. Like I should have just streamlined it and just ran. I didn't know that. But I was just having fun. It's like it's a very immersive game for an ARPG. And it's kind of up there for like a game of the year contender, I'd say. I'm interested to see how seasons work out, but besides that, great story so far, great cinematics, great gameplay. And besides some maybe internet rubber banding, I haven't experienced too many issues. So
have you been playing with people or just by yourself?
By myself mostly. Other people I've seen jump in and out. I haven't really played with friends because they're all still playing like World of Warcraft or something. They haven't jumped over yet. So yeah.
Well, I mean, that's good that you another game that to add to the list of 2033 games at this point. It's been an incredible year, and there's more coming.
Oh, the Game Awards are going to be a bloodbath. I've been saying it's going to be like Legend of Zelda. You got Final Fantasy. We have Diablo, Starfield coming up. It's going to be rough. It's going to be the most indecisive year. I got to say.
Yeah, it's gonna be one where it's Spider-Man still, because Spider-Man suffer again where it doesn't win anything because there's so much around it.
Yeah,
It's going to be one of those crazy years for sure. But just for me, really quick, I've only kind of played the Final Fantasy thing because this was the last week for us at the office, so we've been focusing on getting everybody out the door and all that stuff. So I did get to play a little bit. Today, the Steam Next Fest started, which I'm hoping this week I'll get to play a lot of these demos of games that I was really excited about throughout watching all those showcases and everything for the indies. So if if you're somebody that's curious and you like to try out games, I don't know if Xbox is going to have. They usually have one around this time as well, where they put some of those demos on Xbox as well. So I'm not sure if they will eventually have those if you're a console owner. But if you have a PC, definitely go on Steam. There's like hundreds of games right now that have demos.
Oh yeah.
So check it out. I played a little bit of Eternights, which is that indie like action RPG that kind of looks like Persona. That's also a dating sim. So
I think I heard of this one.
It was on one of the PlayStation State of Plays.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So it's definitely unique for sure. So like your friend puts you, well, you're playing a character, but they allow you to kind of name it whatever you want. So you can either do one of two things: have it act like yourself, or have it be someone else. So your friend gets you on a dating app, and then you're supposed to start going on this date, and then craziness happens, and all of a sudden you get put into this where you're essentially fighting like zombies sort of. And then you go through the action RPG part, and I don't know how far the demo goes, like if you actually get through to some of the dating stuff, but it's fun. The combat's actually it wasn't too hard to get into, but I can see some people that maybe aren't big action game fans a bit struggling, and they want to actually do more of the story part, but they do have difficulty modes. So if you're there more for the story, they do have like a story mode option where they make the combat easier, and you can kind of just go through the story, which is they have some really good like animated like cutscenes, and then they have like the in-game stuff as well. So it's one that I'm definitely. The problem is it's coming out in September, in the week where Mortal Kombat's coming out, Lies of P. There's some other big game coming out like that same week, and then that, and I'm like, oh my god, dude.
Oh yeah, we have
that developer is gonna suffer for sure on that.
Oh yeah, and it's hard because they don't deserve it. They don't deserve to be ignored. Yeah, August is going to be gigantic. September is going to be gigantic. I was doing the content calendar for Season Gaming and getting ducks in a row over there. And I was looking at those months. I'm like, what are we going to do? There's so much. There's so much. And I'm like, I had myself down for 2 reviews. I'm like, oh, I can only do 1. This is going to be a little rough here because two of them are right next to each other. I'm like, all right, October's going to be pretty big. And then like November, nothing.
Yeah, like everybody decided to skip November this year for some reason.
Yeah, and then Avatar on December 7th. It's like, what's going on here?
I don't know. It's really weird. It's like instead of taking advantage of the Black Friday and all that time, I guess they said, oh, well, it won't get nominated for Game of the Year if we don't put it in October. So I guess
that's
we all got to do it before then.
Yeah,
it's crazy, man. Like it's crazy. Just to, I guess, kind of go into any thoughts you had on the Summer Game Fest that just happened. How much like it feels like we're getting into Jeff Keighley is assuming his dream here slowly but surely. Like people are molding their game releases around the Game Awards. Summer Game Fest actually felt like E3 this year. Like we're starting to get there, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like it's funny because I personally like to kind of joke around on Jeff Keighley because it's, he's popular, it's funny, right? But in all seriousness, I give him so much respect for like he single-handedly pretty much saved this entire concept of a conference, especially when you have all these people pulling out and the ESA is doing absolutely nothing to try to keep some sort of legitimacy in the video game world. They're just kind of abandoning the medium. And then you got Jeff Keighley, who's like breaking his back to give back to the community in a way that one of the biggest organizations in the world can't. So I give him so much respect for being able to be like, okay, well, let's get Kojima on stage, which he does all the time, yeah. Or like, let me get Elden Ring. I'm going to show off the first trailer for Elden Ring. That's a huge deal. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I think it is. Like, that's a big deal. And like, he's got stuff on from Summer Game Fest that Sony should have had during their conference.
Right.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, the fact that Sony actually wanted to work with him. They didn't just shove it all in their showcase and go like, I'm sorry, Jeff, we got to do us first,
Yeah. Which, like, if I was Sony, that would probably been a move that I would have pulled. Is like, no, sorry, we want to show off Final Fantasy, like, not you. So the fact that he's respected enough to get that is a huge deal. And for the entire world to kind of just like look at him and be like, okay, we see what you're doing, and we respect it. And I respect him for what he does. I used to put on I used to work on an expo, a local thing by here. So I know what it's like to run like a segment. And it's so hard. It puts you so much work, and you really need a good team to do it. So I respect him for like putting in all that hard work and getting it together, because I really don't think anyone else could have done it. I really don't. It's that's what I
mean, for sure. And for him not to just he actually really did try to bring gaming together instead of the ESA where it's like, hey, everybody to the highest bidder, you do your thing and we'll just be your host and all that stuff, and you pay money to have a booth on the floor. And he's trying to prove that like you don't have to waste money on that stuff. Just do your showcase digitally, bring your games to the like play days and all that stuff. Let people have that experience of having the demos and everything, but you don't have to have this extravagant thing that nobody really needs to. I mean, yes, do I miss that? Like, do I love the fact when I went to E3 and like you get to see all that stuff on the floor and it feels like, oh my God, you're like in video game heaven or whatever. But I don't miss the whole going to like 5 different halls and going a million places for interviews and all that stuff either. I don't. So like the fact that it's all in that one place, that's such a cool thing for journalists. And then for the like gamers, for us watching it at home, it's also a cool thing because there's so much packed in this 1 week, and he's gotten it better every week, every year. And remember, at first it was like this whole month-long thing, and it was like, oh my God, this is way too much information constantly. Mm-hmm. And now he's kind of brought it back to like what E3 was, where it's like, okay, it's 1 week, you get a lot of stuff, and then you get to chew on that for the rest of the year.
Yeah, he did a really good job with that, and all the companies as well, like their reps and whatnot. When E3 was officially canceled, my heart went out to the guys over at ReedPop, because I know a handful of them, and they tried very hard to bring E3 back. And it's just like when you're working with a company, like I said, like the ESA, and they're not letting a single hand. They're just like, yeah, sure, whatever, like make us money. And then my heart, like I said, my heart goes out, went out to them hearing about that. But I'm what was that?
That was actually my usual co-host Mark. He's watching there, and he always has some joke about Tommy Tallarico.
Oh my God!
So he's saying, we need. Yeah.
I don't know if you mind if I go on a brief tangent.
No, go ahead.
Tommy Tallarico is one of the most interesting men in gaming. I gotta say, like Jeff Keighley is there too, of course. But there's something about that guy. Like I want to be in a room with him and just ask him every single, like, no mics, no phones. I just want to be like, what's going on, dude? Like H Bomber? I don't know if you follow like H Bomber guy on YouTube.
Yes,
at all.
Yes, I know who that is.
But he did a video on the Minecraft sound I think it was Minecraft. It was at the O sound. And
Yeah.
it brought him down this wild rabbit hole that ended with Tommy Tallarico. And I'm just like, it blew my mind. And like every time I at least expect this guy to show up, he does. It's like he's just it's amazing. Like we talked about music before. He did video games live.
Yes.
And I'm like, that was him? Like I saw that a couple of times.
He has some like cool credits in industry. It's just sometimes he tries to take credit for things that like really weren't him. And it's the same thing with like him trying to bring back the Intellivision Amico thing, and it's that thing bombed so hard.
Oh my god.
Like they couldn't even make it to where like the Atari thing where okay, that sort of exists in the where no one talks about it, but it exists.
Yeah.
Like he couldn't even get to that where it actually launched and somebody actually reviewed it and talked about it. Like it just bombed. It's completely.
It was. I don't. That's one of the reasons why I want to ask. Like because that had to be my money laundering scheme. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. That guy, like, it's just like he's like a nightmare creature to me. Like, I'm afraid that I'm gonna like turn a corner and it's like boom, Tommy Tallarico is gonna be right there, and I'm like, oh, what? And he's just gonna yell at me or something. I don't know. That's he's so interesting, and it just like he really shouldn't be, but he is, and it drives me nuts. It drives me absolutely crazy. Even the guys from like Mega 64, like he's just an anomaly of a person.
Yeah. That's it. It's so true though, and Mark's making a joke, but he loves retro stuff, so he actually probably pre-ordered the thing, and then of course, it doesn't go anywhere. So
I know plenty of people who did, and they were really upset. And I was like, once I knew Tommy Tallarico was involved, I'm like, it's not happening, guys. I'm sorry, like not to be.
He even had the commercial and everything, and then it's like nothing.
Once I saw like there's this one YouTube preview of it. I forgot who did it, but they're like, "Oh, this is the most immersive game ever." I'm like, "It is not." That is not a good game. Like, I'm sorry.
I mean, the CDI did similar stuff. I mean, it's not
CDI. Ooh, that throws me back.
Yeah, there was actually some decent stuff on that thing. I mean, everybody loves to hate on the Zelda games or whatever, but like that was one of the systems. My dad is not a gamer at all, but aside from the Wii, that is the one system because there was this like wacky golf game for it. I can't remember what the name was. And he had the controller where it had the roller and you had to actually like roll the thing, like make it seem like you're swinging the golf club. And it was actually really cool. And like, he would play that thing with me for hours. And so like, it goes back to that whole thing of when you actually try to make something that is immersive, right? It works, but not the television.
That should have stayed in the grave.
And then Mark makes a point that he's like he knew it was gonna be a scam from day one.
Oh yeah. There's no way you looked at this thing and thought like it was gonna be something serious. It's like I think his next ploy is gonna be like to bring the N gauge back.
Yeah. I mean, like, and the thing is, like, he's one of those people that can sell ice to an Eskimo. So, like, the fact that he got Earthworm Jim 4 to be exclusive to that thing, like, it's like, wow. And then sadly, it never came out.
It once again, he's like Jeff Keighley's like the more lawful good person in the industry. Right. He's chaotic, just straight chaotic. And I'm just like, I need to understand him. Like, I need to understand why.
Yeah, they instead of having Jack and Stranger to Paradise, they should have put Tommy Tallarico in there. It's just him yelling chaos all the time. I can imagine.
It's it's on PC. We'll mod it. Right.
So I mean, that brings. So before we keep going, just because even though you are a senior editor of Season Gaming, and Season Gaming is, man, y'all have gotten huge, man. I feel like between that podcast with Ains and everybody and Hogue and then the site is such a big deal. I love reading stuff on there. Y'all do some great work.
Oh, thank you.
It's always cool to like know where everybody's like gaming origins comes from, like because not everybody like Keith is not actually a games journalist. He's not, from Outer Haven. He's not like this. Oh my God. He started and decided he wanted to make the website, and then he's kind of taken this turn. So like, I know there's other people like that. It's cool to learn where everything started for you. Were you always a gamer from like the moment you remember? Did somebody get you into it, or did you kind of somebody gave you a system and you started there?
Well, I remember we had Nintendo in the house. So I lived in back in the 80s, it was like everyone lived in the same house. It's still kind of like that depending on where you are. But it was this huge family of mine, and we all had this Nintendo. I remember everyone going back and forth and like playing games back, like swapping controllers and all this stuff. But it really started. That was like their system. I just happened to play Mario on it, but it really started with the Sega Genesis with me, like playing Sonic the Hedgehog, and like I loved the Sega Genesis so much. My grandparents bought one for their house, so we would play games over there too with them too. It wasn't like a system where they just like put it in front of us and said do whatever while we do this. My grandmother sat down with me, and we would actually go back and forth in Sonic and like trade the controller. Like if I died, okay, now it's her turn, and she died, she gave it back to me. So it was, my family embraced it, and it was that's kind of like where it was born from. And then down the road, I just started writing once I got jobs at Game Crazy, which is the game store. Yeah,
the one inside Blockbuster, I think, right?
It was Hollywood Video, but Blockbuster had their own.
Right.
Yeah, but Blockbuster had like their own they were trying to do, and it just never took off. But yeah, it was part of Hollywood Video, and I worked there for a while. Then I jumped over to GameStop, and then I call it, from GameStop on, I call it the evolution of the games writer, where it's like, okay, you start as a GameStop employee, then you like work for like a PR firm, or then you work for like a writing for a video game company. It's like a Pokemon evolution kind of a thing. And I started working with Season Gaming about 3 years ago, like right kind of when the pandemic was starting, and I was like, okay, let me get a little bit more writing experience, and I work with these guys because I followed Ains for a very long time. We met on Reddit, and him and I hit it off, and then we got some of the great dudes on there. I met Keith at PAX 2 years ago, and he's a great guy. Keith is awesome. Keith
is amazing, dude. Yeah.
And it was that's kind of where my origins and how I got to this point right now. And I even my day job, I am a computer hardware web content writer for a pretty big retailer. I'm not going to say who.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
I'm just, only because like this company's actually big enough where if someone found me, it'd kind of be like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah. Plus, with the internet, you never know. People are so terrible sometimes.
Yeah. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to tell anyone exactly who, but it's a big company. And I do a lot of their computer work. So it's video games since I was a child, of being 7 years old, playing Sonic. That got me to where I am now.
Hey, I mean, that's cool. You're one of those people that can say, look, video games did something for me. Look what I'm doing with that now. That's always a cool thing. Because, I remember growing up, and my mom's kind of always sort of supported it. My dad was exactly that. He was not a gamer. He just put the thing in front of me, and I don't think he expected me to grab it like I did, and it became like the thing that I like to do, aside from sports. So he was never let me play with you, let me figure out why you like it, kind of thing. He was just like, all right, I'm a doctor, I got too much stuff to do. You play this.
I gotta save lives.
Yeah, I gotta save lives. So it's one of those things where, like, thankfully, it's good to hear those stories of like, hey, this does still happen for people, and the fact that gaming has grown to where, look at all of the stuff. My brother, who's also a tech person, is also like a streamer as well on the side. So it's always cool to me to see how people go from that to another thing in gaming.
Yeah, I met my wife through GameStop. Like we were both assistant managers. It was different stores. We hit it off, and like it's so crazy how gaming has affected my life beyond reason. It shouldn't be like this, and it turned out
Yeah.
perfect.
So like you mentioned Sonic, right? But what are your, I guess, favorite genres? Some other favorite games for you?
Favorite genres, definitely RPG.
Yeah.
MMOs are, I'm big into MMOs. Like I love these time sync. I love any game where I get to fill up a bar and then I can make numbers go bigger. Like if any game has that,
Number go up.
you,
Good.
numbers go up, you got me. So like I'm a big World of Warcraft fan. I'm big I'm
Awesome.
really kind of diving more into Final Fantasy 14 because I got burned out on WoW.
Yeah.
But like I love those games. I love my RPGs. My favorite, I remember telling my parents I was too sick to go to school so I could play Final Fantasy 7. Like that series means so much to me. And then like I'm surprisingly enough out of left field racing games. I
Wow.
don't know
All right.
why. I'm not a big car guy. I love the way cars look, but I can tell you how like parts of an engine, but otherwise like games like Forza Horizon and whatnot and Motorsport, they're just RPGs for cars. That's all they are.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like
just
I mean,
RPGs.
think about it. Like you're literally putting better parts in your car
Mhm.
so you can upgrade your car.
Yeah,
And sometimes they do have numbers that go up with that too. So
exactly.
like
And
yeah,
you put money into it, numbers go up. That's my thing.
yeah. It gets more expensive, so you got to spend more money. I mean,
Exactly. You got to do more races. You're grinding out for resources. I mean, the first game that makes you have to grind out for gas, then I'm done. But
right, yeah.
like the games like Forza, where it's a little arcadey, it's not too serious.
Yeah, because
I
sometimes Gran
those.
Turismo, I can't play Gran
Ooh,
Turismo in the regular Forza because they get too simulation. And I'm like, look,
yeah,
I love driving my car. I've learned to actually like cars and like to know what's in them and how to fix things or whatever. But I'm not oh my god, I gotta have this and I gotta drive at like 30 miles an hour to go past this turn and I got
I'm
the
just
Gran
like,
Turismo movie looks cool, but I don't want to drive like that.
it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way where it's just like I like the Horizon series because it's a playground. It's go around, do whatever you want, and they're just like Forza Horizon. I think they're on 5 is the more recent one, where they're just like, here's a supercar. You turn the game on. Here's a supercar. Go 300 miles an hour, hit a ramp, go fly into the ocean. I don't care. And I'm like, yes, that's how this game should be. But I do respect like the simulation games and stuff, and I think that's also partially due to like my history with like Grand Theft Auto and like those, those kinds of games where they were very car centric, like Twisted Metal. Like even though it was like a car combat game, it was still car centric. So it was there's another one I had at the top of my head, but I forgot what it was. But yeah, MMOs, RPGs, and racing games.
Well, that's that's cool to have that one that's a bit different. For me, like I said, I always like sports, and then people are they go, oh, why do you like these RPG things and whatever? They're just a bunch of before Game of Thrones, it wasn't cool to necessarily always to like that stuff. So now Dungeons and Dragons is becoming like more in vogue or whatever. It's not like old 80s thing that people used to play and you're like a super nerd. So I'm like, I go, yo, you guys that are so crazy into fantasy football, you don't understand. That's basically like an RPG for football, right?
Oh,
like
it is.
Y'all are just drafting a team and then putting them out there to see who gets you the most points. The same shit.
It's a yearly roguelike,
Exactly. It's not anything crazy. Like people just don't see it because it's like, oh well, football's cool. So it's like, no, it's the same thing, guys. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's you wear the jerseys, you get the numbers, your favorite.
You go to the bar and buy food and sit there and watch games that you don't give a crap about because one player is on it. Like, come on.
And you're looking at your phone going, my guy's out. Like, throw a Phoenix down, see if he gets back up.
Exactly. Yes. The medics gotta come out, the concussion guys
Yeah.
gotta come out and save him. Like,
Throw him a health potion. He can use some HP. Oh man, I think Final Fantasy X's what was it, Blitzball really kind of revealed that, like, hey, everything is an RPG. Everything in life is an RPG. Numbers go up.
And if anything, gaming now is everything is trying to. If it's not already, it's everything is let's be an RPG. So
Assassin's Creed, let's make it an RPG. I'm like, oh, okay, not bad, but I mean, I like the original.
God of War, let's make it an RPG. Let's like
everything's got to have a grind. Everything's got to be like that. It's like, can we just leave the RPG mechanics to the RPG guys, please?
Yeah,
don't make
like
rewards, but don't do something like these. Every game having like a percentage, like, oh, this increases your defense by 2%. Like, can we just stop it?
Like not every game needs to do that. Like, because then it's going to be all homogenous, and then we won't have the awesome eclecticness that is gaming. Speaking of that, really quick, before we get totally off the topic, did you have any games that like you were excited to see from Summer Game Fest or any of the other showcases?
The biggest one for me is gonna be Starfield. Like, how could you not? But I'm a big sci-fi guy. Like I say, I don't try to get hyped over things because like I feel like hype is, I don't want to say it's genuinely a bad thing, but how you deal with hype could end up being bad. Like if you hype it up so much and it ends up not living up to your expectations, which over the last couple of years we've had a huge experience with. So Starfield is one of those games where like it looks so good. I'm super happy. They showed off that Starfield Xbox controller and the headset. I was like,
oh my god, that controller looks so awesome.
Do I need those? I do not.
No,
I do not. But do I want them? Yes.
I had a friend who was gonna guest on the show and he couldn't, and it was actually his birthday on Sunday. Shout out Seb Cardone, man. He got the controller and I was like, oh my god, that looks so pretty. I'm sitting there going, nope, must not press button on Amazon, must not press.
I have two controllers right next to me. I got this one, the 30th and the 20th anniversary one, which like the control style just looks so good. This is one of my favorites. And I had the Titanfall controller, then that broke on me, which was upsetting. And then for Christmas, my brothers got me one of the Elite controllers with the Design Lab, blue, purple, cool. Red. Yeah, I like this one. And I'm kind of like, if I get another controller, I'm not going to use these, so I can't get another controller.
You'll have to like purposely make yourself like go, okay, well, I'm going to play with this controller today.
Yeah, and like the Starfield controller, it just looks so good. And then what was it like? And then I realized like that's kind of how Microsoft's making their money, because they have Game Pass, so they're not making money off of games like Starfield really. But they'll make money off the peripherals, so that's like their give and take. And I'm like, okay, I don't need.
Design Lab thing is such a neat idea.
Oh man, it's so good. The Design Lab stuff is so fantastic, but that's where their money is. It's in this kind of hardware. I used to actually work for Microsoft, so I know firsthand of what they're making money off of. And this is one of those things where like they struck gold with it. They really did, and it's good quality stuff. I will say. For the most part, I know some people had issues with the Elite version 1, but this one, Elite 2, has been holding up pretty well through my my Diablo campaign. So
that's good here. I mean, since we're on the Xbox topic, they had by all accounts a tremendous showcase after having like so many years of people just downing them. But a lot of stuff came out after the showcase. They had this big interview where they talked about a bunch of different things. I kind of gave you like little highlights of things that they talked about. Was there something that stood out to you that you feel like, okay, we kind of need to talk about that?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a big hardware guy. I'm a big PC guy. I wrote a couple articles comparing the PlayStation architecture with the Xbox architecture with like the Steam Deck and like how the PC market's now changing because it's in a weird spot right now. I don't know if anyone's really privy to what's going on with like Nvidia and AMD and all these how that affects consoles which is a big deal. So you have it right here about Starfield being locked at 30 FPS on the Xbox Series X, but it's 4K resolution, and this hits home for me because I love this game. I love how it looks, and everyone who's played like the hour-long demo of it has said they loved everything they interacted with. And I don't think a lot of people are understanding the full scope of what this game is. Like, there's a reason why that direct was 45 minutes. I watched it.
There was a lot in there.
It's a lot of information. I watched this thing 3 times because there was that much info on it. And if you really paid attention to it, they did drop hints on why it has to be 30 frames per second on the console. On PC, I'm expecting 60. And I got no problem running it because the specs are out and the specs are pretty decent. But people will get like, there's no such thing when it comes to like PC or just game development. In any case, there's no such thing as a decision. There's compromises. That's what all these companies do. They don't go out and say, well, we're going to make this 30. That's what we have to do. No, they tried 60 and 60 wasn't working. No matter what they did, no matter what horsepower they threw at it, all the horses, no matter what they threw at it, it just wasn't going to work. So they said, okay, well, we're going to have to compromise this in one way. Do we want, because here's how it works. It's either, and it kind of stinks to say this, but when you look at a game like the scope and the scale with the regenerative concepts and everything being like thrown in your face quickly without hesitation, you need to consider, okay, well, we have 4K resolution. That's a need. Okay, well, if we do 4K resolution, then we're going to have to cut the frames from 60 to 30. Like, can we deal with that? I can deal with that. I don't know if the hardcore gamers who are complaining, they can't deal with that, but they'll deal with it. Because if there's one thing that is weaker, the weakest thing in the world is a gamer boycott. Like, we know this.
Yes. Every time. Not to mention the fact that people always tend to forget the loud voices on social media are such a small section of gaming. There is such a wider variety of the gamer out there that has no idea this is happening, and they'll go and buy it because they don't care. Right?
Yeah. So there's something called the diffusion of innovation. The law of diffusion of innovation, and it's if it was popularized by this speaker named Simon Sinek, and it's a marketing concept where you have a couple of groups of people, and you want to market yourself to hit these specific groups of people, and starts out with the early adopters. That's going to be the people buying the Starfield controller day 1 or day 0, like -0. The game's not even out yet. People are buying shit up. Part of my language. Then you have like the people who are like, okay, now I'm going to buy this stuff because they're buying this stuff and they're saying it's good. So I'm going to dive into it. And then you have more of those people. Then starts going down into the last resort, the people who only change because they have to. And Microsoft is smart enough to understand their market. They understand who they're going for. They're going a little bit for the early adopters because they're going to bring the other people in, and they're reaching a market penetration of like 15%. And that's what they call the threshold. If you can get past like 15 to 20%, you're golden. And that's what Microsoft's doing with these games, is that they know who they're going for. They know what's going on. And the loudest people on the internet are not the crowd they're going for. Right. They're not.
Because there's many people that look at that and they go, oh man, I can do all this stuff and in space, and they're going to just get grabbed on that. And then you go, oh wait, I can just subscribe to Game Pass and play this for $15. Like, oh, right there. And then you got a new Game Pass subscriber. Like, and they're not really what you would call a hardcore gamer, but they got it based on what they saw in that thing.
Yeah. They're the way that Microsoft is, it's funny because all these companies, like, they have the smartest people on their staff. They write checks for the right people. And the guy on Twitter with an anime profile pic who's going to tell me that they don't know what they're doing. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Like, you know better, sure. So the fact that Redfall was a big mistake and they owned up to that. It wasn't great. I didn't even play it. I just know I don't have time.
Yeah.
I just know it wasn't good. But with all the positive feedback I've heard with Starfield, like, and the fact that they pushed it off that far, they know they have something really good on their hands, and I'm just very excited to play it. That's my pick for that showcase, because as of right now, I can't remember a single thing other than that.
You had a Vow. They showed a little bit of Fable, which we still don't know. Good.
Fable, we're still a while off.
Yeah,
from my understanding and the information that I know, we're still a while off. They just filled up their last writing spot, so the narrative design team is a great team of people, and as we know, Fable is all about the narrative. So we got to wait for them. Not people can fly. Playground. They have to that they're like redevelop their entire engine to work for Fable because they don't want to make it a racing game. So I wouldn't mind as an RPG, but they had to do a lot of work to like just get to the point that they were at. So to see them, honestly, I was really surprised to see them open with Fable, because I was not expecting to have that kind of a full trailer at that time, because apparently that's also showing off like what the game is supposed to be like. So I'm expecting maybe 2 years, maybe 2025.
That's what it felt like to me. 2025 is the fact that they didn't even put anything close, like, because everything else there was pretty much like 2024, that kind of thing. The fact that they didn't put a date on it probably makes them feel like we don't feel like this is going to be anything close to 2024 right now.
And the fact that we know that Microsoft has no problem pushing games off that they need to be pushed off, like I know a lot of people like to point to Redfall and be like, well, what about that one? But there was a lot of stuff behind the scenes.
They did delay that game.
Right? Yeah, they did.
And the fact that also it's like they didn't come in with that game. That game was brought to them. Mm-hmm. They delayed it, and then, like Phil said, it was at the point where it's like it didn't really matter how much more time we gave it. The way that the game was made, it would have had to take an entire overhaul that could have taken even longer. And how many resources are you going to waste on that? Yeah. When you just put the game out, and then, hey, hopefully it pulls one of these Ubisoft things where they can get it into a state where people might enjoy it at some point.
Yeah, like I don't like seeing a game fail, and I don't like it when people like say like they praise a game for failing or something like that. But like Redfall is like it's a learning opportunity, and plus like, there was a lot of stuff going on at Arcane that Microsoft didn't even know was happening. Right. Like a lot of people quitting, that huge deal.
They lost almost a lot of that Prey team and everything.
So like when you're experiencing that sort of attrition, like how do you collect yourself and still release a product? Like I think releasing a game at all is a miracle. I don't think people understand like how much work it takes to get to that point, especially when like you're considering like just the pipeline, the scope, and everything. Like I'm surprised that Halo. I'm not surprised, but having Halo get pushed off, like it's not in great spot right now because of the after effects of the store. But imagine if that came out when it was supposed to. Like that would have been terrible. And then Starfield getting the push, like we know Starfield needed that push. So it's and I mean, and you compare that to something like Legend of Zelda. Tears of the Kingdom was supposed to come out last year, but they spent a year on just fixing bugs. Imagine if Nintendo released that when it was supposed, like last year when they said it was supposed to come out. That would have been a train wreck. But
same thing with Final Fantasy 16, right? Yoshi basically said, "Oh, we spent the last year, year polishing it." I mean, they're still going to have a day one patch, but imagine if they would have tried to have it come out last year.
Yeah, and that's kind of like where we are. What we're looking at the industry is on en masse. AAA games need just a year of polish to come out without any issues. Yeah. Like, I don't think the yearly schedule, like even what was it, Call of Duty, they went from just two teams going. You get year one, we get year two, then we get year three, then you get year four. Now they have three separate teams who are working on a 3-year cycle because they need one year to just like figure out other stuff. That's where we're at in AAA gaming.
Not to mention all the support studios that basically help them as well. So
yeah, and then you got like what was it, Corey Barrog? I can't ever say his name.
Yeah,
correctly.
Corey Balrog. Yeah,
Balrog. Yeah, he was saying like, hey, listen, we made God of War Ragnarok like 2 games into one because it would have taken 10 years. We had Todd Howard saying that Elder Scrolls 6 might be his last game. Like, people don't understand how long it takes to make a game. Like you have right here that
Matt Booty says that, right? He's like, people need to kind of understand that dev cycles are like 5 to 6 years minimum now, like for a AAA game.
Yeah.
That was going to be my point of, there was a lot of discourse, which sometimes discourse is bad, but this was actually good discourse.
Yes.
Of, are we getting too much into a divide of, we have indies and then everything else is AAA, and we don't have that middle ground anymore? And
no, you're absolutely right.
Like, do we need to start getting back to that? Because there was people bringing up, which a lot of times we get so sucked into this and we don't think about the humans on the other side. And it's like, can you think about, that's 5, 6, 7, 8 years working on the same thing every single day to get one game out of your life. 5 to 8 years, one game.
And you're talking like, you have so many lives behind that. Like you said, like, I think to put it into perspective, when Cyberpunk 2077 was announced to when it launched, okay, I met someone, I got married, I had a kid, I went through 2 cars, I got like 5 different jobs. Life happened in that lifespan. Like, you really think about like, and that their production was a long production. That was a 7-year production. And you have Matt Booty saying like, oh, it's average, it's going to take 5. And if one thing goes wrong, you just need one, you get one key person to leave your company, and that sets you back months. Like, someone loses the keys, the USB drive, that's a project, just getting that back. We don't know exactly what's going on, and we don't deserve to know what's going on. Like, we're not entitled to that information. And so,
and the problem is, with the way people react, they make you not want to give out that information.
Exactly. I don't want to tell people where my day job is because I'm afraid. So,
right. Yeah.
Like, I don't want people to,
the fact that, like, oh my God, the game, I feel like people are starting to be a little bit more understanding, but like, even now, people will announce some kind of delay. And if it's some huge franchise, you're going to get people with death threats. Like, it's like the world ended because now, oh my God, I asked off from work that day. And like, now I can't have that day. I'm like, yo, dude, I get it. Some people, you really have to put in PTO and all that stuff, and that's a big deal. But you're not thinking about, those are humans on the other side, and the catastrophe that they will deal with, even bigger if that game comes out and it is in terrible shape than if they waited another year to release that. But you don't get to know when you should, because people act like that.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. And like, as someone who's been trying to get into like the narrative design aspect of gaming, I keep that in mind of like, like it's a rough job. It's not the roughest out there, but I know there's plenty of jobs that are really hard. But like, when you have people who are leaving social media because they get hate, like that should tell you something. Like, that should really awaken something in your mind, as a person, not even as a gamer, but just as a human being, to be like, you know what, maybe we're taking it too far. Like, maybe gaming has gone too far. And it's a far cry from what it used to be, where a lot of the retro guys will understand where a game came out and it came out. That was it. You didn't get no updates. You spent your money on that game, your allowance, and that's what you got. So be happy and play through the whole damn thing.
Exactly. Like, if there was something in there that makes it to where you can't progress, well, I don't know, figure it out.
Figure it out.
Like,
Call the manual. The phone number in the back of the manual is like for tips. Call 1-800
Yeah,
Nintendo.
call them. Spend I don't know how much money on collect calls or whatever to get that resolved, or buy the strategy guide or whatever it is. It's just like that's the thing is there used to be that middle ground of the THQs and all of that, like having your AA games, and now you don't really have that anymore. Or if you do, people lambast it for being a AA game, and shouldn't we? I think we're going to have to get to the point where we need to accept that there are going to be that needs to come back, because if not, we're going to get more and more time between these huge games.
Yeah, and like that's a thing. A mutual of mine, Tony Polanco, I remember when he said out last year, and I didn't agree with him when he said this. He said that the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5 feel like a lost generation. And at first I was kind of like, what are you talking about? And then like after a full year, I thought about it. I looked at these games. I'm like, okay, we have 3 or 4 AAA games from first party studios releasing in a year. 3 or 4. Like, that's not a lot. That's not a lot of games. The fact that we don't
look
know,
at PlayStation this year, it's 1.
Yeah. We don't know anything about PlayStation going into 2024. We don't know. We have no idea, and that's 6 months away. February we'll be busy with stuff like we always are, but we don't know what's happening. We can't. And you start asking yourself, well, why did I buy this console in the first place?
Right.
When we have these indie games, these indie darlings out there that are so stylish and fantastic, running on potatoes. Like that's kind of why I really like the Steam Deck. And I think that also goes back to Nintendo, the one brand that no one likes talking about. They love Nintendo, they do. But you look at what Nintendo's doing with the Switch, and Tears of the Kingdom is, for what it is, it's a fantastic game. It should not exist on that platform. It should not exist on that using that Tegra, the NVIDIA Tegra chip. That's an ARM processor. That's an old ass.
It's almost 10 years old at this point.
Yeah. And NVIDIA hasn't pulled the plug on that, which I'm surprised. But you have all these games that can run on that hardware. Why would Nintendo put the money to release a more powerful system when all it's going to do is blow up the budget? It's going to make companies have to put more work into a 5-year project. And they're already taking 10 years to make a Legend of Zelda or something.
Yeah.
But it's, having weaker hardware right now is not that big of a deal. We really don't need a Switch Pro. We don't. Like they've shown us that. And, it makes me think of, well, why did we buy a PlayStation? Like, remember all the games that came out? Okay, it's coming out for PlayStation 4 and PS5.
Right.
Well, we only bought a PlayStation 5 because we needed it for some reason.
Well, yeah, because you thought, right? Well, you're like, oh man, we're gonna get that step up, right? And then all of a sudden the pandemic happened. I think if the pandemic hadn't happened, I think we would have bounced into the PS5 and series a lot faster.
Yeah, I agree.
They had to regress to putting God of War and Horizon Forbidden West on PS4 because they're like, we can't even get people to buy this system because scalpers are freaking eating it alive. And then there's distribution problems because of the pandemic, and we're only selling it on our website. Like, and every time we put it on our website, it crashes. Like, at some point, and Microsoft might have been the smartest person out there of having the Series S, because they could actually put that in the store. It was around. People didn't buy it for the most part because, it's seen as the lesser of the two, but people are buying that thing, right?
Yeah.
And you tie that with Game Pass, and it's a big money saver for people that were going through issues in the pandemic, and even now, the parent that wants to just buy a game system for their kids. I almost thought about it when my daughter was really getting into games. She's kind of more of like I'll play Roblox with my friends or do a lot of things. They get that age, they just want to do stuff with their friends. And then my thing is, as a reviewer, as somebody that's a journalist, gaming has kind of always been it's my other job. So I'm always stuck having to do something with the system. So there's been a few times where I got to play things with her. And a lot of times I can't because I'm having to use it for something. But the Series S does work for what it was intended. But it's not the next gen console, right? It's not the thing that is supposed to push us forward. And I did see Tony's point back then. It's funny because he just posted like an article, I think like yesterday, about how now they are starting to be like next gen. So the irony there, after everything that was shown off on Summer Game Fest, and I agree, right? It just took time to get out of the pandemic stuff, get used to the remote work thing, and get in a better quality of life situation for a lot of people. It sucks that all these people are like being demanded to go back to the office.
I
think sucks as well, because it's like their life is already tied to this game for all this time for them to make a living, and then you're going to force them to be in an even worse situation, like when now they have to do a commute that they didn't have to, or they have to be even more away from their family than they maybe already are. Like, it's just that's the thing. We don't think about that human side. So perhaps embracing the AAAs, or the indies are already expanding. We're seeing the indies start gravitating towards PS1, PS2 look kind of games. Like, I think people also need to understand that because of how long quadruple A's and triple A's take to make, we're going to have to start embracing it. Another thing that Tony was always talking about, I'm not buying these consoles to play indie games, and then that's fair. That's what that's a fair take. His opinion. But I do think we need to embrace that, because it's like indies is where you see the innovation. Indies is where you see a lot of things that will eventually go into your triple A's.
Yeah, I when I went to PAX East a couple of years ago, it was an eye-opening experience as a journalist to cover the indie games, because I remember it was 2022 at the Boston Convention Center. It wasn't a big year. It was not a big year. There was not a lot of AAA games there, if any. Really, if there was any. And it was all indie games. It was all AA and indie titles and studios. But I remember they had this one little booth, or kind of section on the floor, and it was just these little stations that one or two people could play games at. And I was talking to the developers of these games, and these are people who put their lives into these games. Right. The game Dwarf from Half Human Games, the creator there, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was just fantastic to talk to. He was a great person, and it was a two-guy project. It was done on Kickstarter, so it's backed by people who believe in this project, and it was just kind of phenomenal to talk to him and understand what it's like working as just the two-person team, like the marketing behind it, the getting it officiated and put through like the Xbox service, and then the PlayStation service and Steam and all these places. And it's an indie game. It's a fantastic little game. It's like a mix of it's like a tower defense game meets like it's like tower defense, where you walk around and you're putting down traps and you're trying to organize things to kill all your enemies before they get to the end or kill you. And it's a neat little game. I love stuff like that. But we need to embrace these games. We need to, because they're inspired by some of the biggest stuff. Like Tunic was inspired by Dark Souls and Legend of Zelda. Like, people are like, I want to play a game like this. And I'm like telling them, like, yes, there's an indie game that's like that. There's this game that's inspired by Metroid. You should try this. Ori was an indie game. You should try Ori. I don't want to. Okay, well then you should try Bloodstained if you're like Castlevania. I don't want to. I want to play Castlevania. And then you realize it's all about the name.
Exactly. It's all about the known thing.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, Castlevania has a licensing fee. So you throw Castlevania onto the title card of any game, that price just went up $30.
Yeah, I mean, the Dead Cells DLC, right? They put Castlevania in there, and they got to charge you.
Oh yeah, but that didn't, that was a awesome add-on, but that was negotiated like crazy. And Dead Cells, if that was like the first Castlevania would never done it, or like a Konami would never send the licensing fee for that if it was like the first year Dead Cells came out when it was still in like early access. It would never happened. And the fact that so many people picked it up, and now that game's everywhere. That game runs on my phone.
But that's what's incredible. It's like it's not this like hog of a game where you need to have this great setup for whatever. You could play it on anything, and it's a great game. And and you can just enjoy it as like learning that genre, because then what happens? Hades comes out, and it's like, oh my god, oh, I didn't know I liked roguelikes before, and I'm one of those people, right? That I just didn't like the fact of, okay, I'm just doing this game over and over and trying to, and then when I played Hades, I got it, right?
Oof,
and now I kind of appreciate that genre. But that's the thing, is like sometimes just blocking yourself out to the fact that it's not this huge, humongous game. It's like, this is why I feel like both Sony does this as well. I give them both credit. Yeah. Both PlayStation and Xbox embrace indies in their own way. But this is why Xbox has that ID at Xbox thing, because they know that when we're talking about years down the line, what's going to keep Game Pass going, aside from these games that they eventually, hopefully, are going to get in some kind of domino order, is these indie titles that are going to keep growing. So, just start learning, because that's what's going to be coming.
And not to mention that, like, the more you support the indie game market, you get more games.
Yeah.
like that's the thing that really makes the most sense out of this. You support an indie studio, right? Let's say we'll use Spirit Farther. I don't remember the company that made it, but they made that one game, was on Game Pass, did great, and now they're making 33 Immortals.
Yeah. Oh my god, that looks awesome too.
Like I had no interest in it until I saw like Phil playing it with the team. I was like, okay, no, this is actually really cool. But like, that's an indie game. Like, no one would have, like, that game would never have happened if Spirit Farther didn't come out and people didn't like pick up on that game and learn of it through Game Pass and ID at Xbox and all that stuff. It's you need to kind of support the indie market, because the other thing too is that we need to realize is that the AAA gaming market, people are leaving it like in droves.
Yeah, it's also hard for you to get from. You got to start somewhere, right? You got to start
exactly.
So for you to get to that AAA studio is already so difficult. You got to support the indies, because they're the ones that are going to keep the thing going. And then also when those people leave and they spin off their own studio, most of them, they have to start making an indie game, right, to make money.
I was and it's funny because so I mentioned before that I want to get the narrative design, and I've talked to a lot of major developers and like how to get into that whole market area, and they say like one of the biggest things you can do is go to GitHub, and they have like game jams, and they say like find a game jam that needs a writer, and do it, because that's how you start. You need to understand the process. You need to understand the concept of writing and putting something out there and putting the work in, because when I was younger, I always thought the world, like the world owed me something. When I was like a POS teenager, like, oh, I deserve this. So no, you don't. I don't deserve anything. You get to work for what you want, and you want to be a game dev. You want to work. Anything you want, you have to really work for it, and no company is willing to put their money on something where someone doesn't know what they're doing or they've never worked on it before. So, it sucks, but you have to pay your dues. I did freelance writing for a long time. I wrote a lot about games, and I put my work into it, and I got the job I have now because of it. And you're gonna have people like Todd Howard leave. He said it. The guy can't, even though he looks like he hasn't aged, and they put him in like a cryo tube for like 9 months out of the year. Like he eventually he's going to leave. These great minds that we have behind the most awesome modern games we have, they're going to leave, and we need people to fulfill their shoes. And that starts from the bottom. That starts from the bottom completely. And if we support these indie games, these smaller studios, who knows? The guy who made some of the best the guy Supergiant, I don't think I've played a bad game from them. Who knows? If you give these guys a crazy...
Speaking of starting as a game journalist, right? Look at Greg
Yeah.
Kasavin, what he's been able to do over there.
Gary Whitta,
yeah,
huge writer. He was a game journalist. He was writing about video games, and now he's Star Wars.
Writing, yeah, exactly. Writing Rogue One. I mean, for God's sakes.
Like, you look at where a lot of these people started, and like, if that doesn't motivate you, I don't know what does.
Right.
Like, and I think everyone should when not even just support indie games, but support yourself. Do something right. If it's not by yourself, at least like just pick up a Game Pass is full of indie games. Just pick one. Just pick one.
Exactly. You're paying your $10 or $15 a month. Pick something.
Yeah.
Like
even if you play for 10 minutes, that's 10 minutes longer than someone else gave it attention. And
look, I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of stuff on Steam that is not great. Okay, they have a like minimum level $100 fee or whatever that you got to pay to get. Like, that's all you got to do. You got to pay that, and then you can put your game on there. Like, it's like, and then even you go on to itch or whatever, you don't have to pay anything. So it's, if we're gonna go down to that level, then yeah, sure, you're gonna find stuff that's not great, but maybe that's the base level of what indie gaming is right now. There's a lot of people that say, "Oh, well, man, all this indie gaming stuff, it's not really indie games anymore because you got all these people supporting it and whatever." But it's like, if that's the base level, the stuff that you see on Game Pass, the stuff you see on PS Plus, the stuff you see that's like usually the top part of Steam or whatever, that's just been curated. That stuff's been bled through with reviews and everything like that. You know you're going to get something good. You just give it that time. You never know. It could absolutely surprise you.
Give a game 10 minutes. Give it 10 minutes. Yeah. That's all the devs want. If you don't like it, then you don't like it. That's not a big deal.
That's the beauty of those services. You don't have to keep playing it. You can let it go and play something else. Since we're on that topic, there's a feeling in, or well, Phil was asked, there was a lot of questions as I put in that list of stuff, but Phil was asked a question that I felt was very interesting because we see how Sony and Xbox differ on what they do with Game Pass, what they do with PS Plus, what they do with PC gaming, right? And Phil was asked, what is your take on PC gaming? And he said, well, PC gaming is on a window for us. It's a market that we want to bring our games to day one. And then you listen to Jim Ryan and Herman Holst, and they're saying, well, number one thing for us is PlayStation 5. That's what we care about. Those PC games, they'll come out a year or two, whatever later, and you guys can buy them on PC if you want. But we're going to make sure our PS5 gamers get fed or whatever first, which that's fair as well, right? And then PS Plus does not want to put their big games day one, as Xbox does. So do you, when you see that, like, I guess obviously both of them prove that both of them work in a way, but do you have a preference? Do you think one is better than the other, like going long term looking at things?
Well, I'm primarily a PC guy these days. So if a game's coming to PC, that's better for me. That's better for me. I think Sony can do whatever they want. They're in the hardware game in a different way. I remember an interview with Major Nelson 10 years ago when the PC gaming space was like on the rise. Like, it was still in its infancy, but it was getting bigger, and Microsoft saw like, hey, listen, we need to capture that because no one else is. And they don't want Apple to beat them to it. So when they, in an interview with Major Nelson, someone asked him, oh, so what about the PC market? And Major Nelson said, oh, you mean our other console? Like that said to me, like, okay, they're serious. They're serious about delivering on the PC market. And the fact is that, like, the PC market has grown exponentially It is gigantic now. It's too hard to, you can't ignore it. With Sony, it's really interesting because consoles don't make a lot of money. They don't.
Right.
They make about maybe $40 of profit.
And they have to sell it at a loss because if not, it's a ridiculous expense for everybody.
So they have to sell it on, they have to sell it the software. And that's kind of the big difference here, is that Sony is selling you the console. They're also selling you the software. They're also selling you the controllers. They're selling you the other parts of the peripherals. They're selling you the PlayStation VR. They're selling you the games for the VR. And they're saying no to the PC market because who gets a cut of that? Someone else, right? Valve gets a cut of the money, or Epic gets a cut of the money, although not as much, or Microsoft gets a cut of the money. So they don't want to do that. They're Sony, as much as I do like all these companies a lot, Sony is probably the most nefarious of them all, because they don't want people to go outside their walled garden. They don't want people to see, these games running super high fidelity on a PC, because they're like, oh, that means
they don't want you to know the grass is greener on the other side.
Yeah. And that's not always the case, with Last of Us on PC. You don't want to talk about that one, but it's very, like, I played Spider-Man on PC, and it was like night and day difference. I'm telling you, night and day difference from PlayStation 5 to PC. But not everyone has my PC build, and that's kind of like the big downfall. I don't think it hurts Sony if they put their games on day one on PC as well, because they're not pushing out physical media. They could have a separate contract with Steam or whatever. I don't know the semantics behind it. I'm not gonna pretend I do. But it's, as a gamer who plays mostly on PC, it is kind of upsetting to see them go that route, because the PlayStation 5, as much as I like it, is weaker hardware to me. Right. So I'm not getting the best experience. And that's kind of like why I had Final Fantasy 16 on the back, because I was kind of like, okay, I want to play it on the best hardware. And the best hardware that I own is not the PlayStation 5. Right. It's not. As much as we'd love to say it is, it's not. My PC is both PCs are way better than it. And, Microsoft understands that. And they're like, we want to give people choice, because that's what their thing is. They had their walled garden with the Xbox One, and I was a beta and alpha tester for that console. It was very walled off until Phil Spencer came in, and he was like, no, let's open the gates. Let's do the total opposite, because currently what we're doing is not working. And Sony really went big with the PlayStation 4. And now we're seeing Sony kind of backstep, and they're acting like they did when the PlayStation 3 came out, where, oh, the price tag's not so bad. Oh, this isn't so bad. This is good. They're getting a little cocky. So yeah, I think Microsoft is playing their cards right. And I think Nintendo's just in the background, like, just counting money and be like, oh, what's up now? All right, yeah, no worry. No, you guys fight it out, though.
I mean, look, Nintendo is the reason the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally and all of that stuff exists, right? The reason why Sony has that Project Q thing where you can remote play it or whatever. Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, not to mention that thing looks really stupid. It looks like basically if that's really what it's going to look like, you already have that. You're selling people a backbone controller with your PS5 thing. They're like, what are you doing? I hope that's seriously a concept, because holy crap. I mean,
no, in Sony it's not that, but that's the thing. It's like one step forward, two steps back with Sony.
Right. They feel like they can get away with it because where they are. Right. And then
exactly. And like their whole version of PlayStation Plus with the 3 tiers, or the essentials, or whatever they call it. Yeah. I'm just like, listen, I'm in this space. I am terminally online. I get it.
Yeah.
Like, we get it. We understand how this works. But you look at like the average person, and all this is done to confuse the average gamer, like the average person who isn't online, who doesn't know the ins and outs, who need to talk to someone to turn the brightness up on their phone because they don't know how to do it. They're kind of like, it's very nefarious. And meanwhile, you have Microsoft, who's just like, give us $15, just play everywhere. We don't care.
Right.
It's
we want you to play everywhere.
Yeah,
We will talk
yeah.
about how much we want you to play everywhere. Sony's kind of like, yeah, you can stream. Oh, now we're gonna make a big deal about streaming all of a sudden because it's possibly causing this deal that we don't want to happen
Oh,
be a
yeah.
problem. And like, oh well, Microsoft's pushing it, so we want to do our own cloud thing because right now we're having to pay Microsoft to do our cloud for us.
Yeah.
And like I get it, but it's like, you guys had cloud first, right? If you guys would have actually gone after that, you could have been sitting pretty where Microsoft is once again behind you. But that's the thing is, I think it most of the time, Microsoft, I feel like, has been behind, right? Because if you think about what they want to do with Xbox One, always online, all that stuff, well, we're kind of always online right now. A lot of games have to be always online. Now they're trying to push into like play everywhere thing, and now Sony's like, oh, you know what? I think we kind of need to do that too. Like
it's two mentalities fighting each other. There's this thing called there's this concept of, do you know the game you're playing? And that's what these businesses are playing. They're playing two different games themselves. There's the finite game and the infinite game. And the finite game is when you have two teams who are competing against each other. They know the rules. They know there's a definite winner and there's a definite loser. Then there's the finite game. No, that's a finite game. Then you have the infinite game, which is the goal for that is just to stay in business. And Microsoft has learned that. They learned that the goal isn't to beat the other person. The goal is to stay in business. And Sony is playing it where it's like, okay, we know we have to stay in business, but we really want to beat them. Like, that's not really what we want to do, but we want to. So they're trying all these different things to try to beat the competition, and it's not working out that well.
I mean, it's working out now, but we're starting to see the cracks.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's kind of like death of a thousand cuts with them right now. It's just like they got a lot of people on board with the hardware and the promises, like Ratchet and Clank and Spider-Man and all these games. Like, they look really good. I'm going to play them. I'm going to. But when I'm done with those games, am I going to keep the PlayStation from collecting dust? That's the big thing. Microsoft is able to keep people going, because of their third-party support and Game Pass, which is super easy to use and a super easy concept to understand. They know that, like, they know that there's no finish line. That's what it is. There's none. There's no finish line. But, and here's the genius behind the whole thing, is that Microsoft knows that. They understood that years ago. And it was a big thing when Windows 8 came out and it didn't do too hot. So they're like, okay, we got to jump to Windows 10. They had to jump instantly because they knew it just wasn't going to work. And didn't. And Ballmer left and all these people left. This big exit of a lot of major names. And meanwhile, Sony was kind of like sitting on their laurels and going like, oh, we don't have to worry about anything because they're in disarray. And then they collected themselves and realized, okay, here's our new approach. Instead of being the walled garden, we're going to give open access to everyone. We're going to have games everywhere. It's going to hit us, but it's not about the short game. It's about the long game. Where we're going to be in 10 years. And Sony, it has been, and it's very obvious, Sony has been playing the immediate short-term game. And now it kind of...
And Microsoft was making it easy for them as well to play the immediate short-term game. It was like, oh, we can just keep doing gotchas because you keep screwing yourself. And then, oh, well, while y'all are developing this thing over here, we're kicking your butt. And they didn't really see... To be fair to PlayStation, they probably didn't think that this was going to work, right?
Oh, yeah.
Even though Microsoft has what you call infinite resources, they probably felt like, okay, eventually the Game Pass subs are going to hit a wall. We're going to start making it to where they can't get the big games. So people are not going to keep subscribing to this thing. Microsoft's going to stop putting money into it. And eventually they're going to have to cave the service, right? And then all of a sudden, oh, wait, this is actually taking off. Maybe we need to do something about it. And here comes PS Plus, right? And then the thing is that Microsoft turned it on its head again with the idea of Xbox thing, because they're like, we can't fight Sony, but they could. But what's the point of wasting money to outbid Sony on getting a third party onto system that the third party really doesn't want to do because they're not going to buy the game. They're just going to play it on Game Pass and then they're done with it, right? So they have this like pipeline that keeps giving them games to put on Game Pass. It's this ingenious thing that I actually didn't really think about until last year of like, wow, if you really think about how many games they have in that program and how many they keep putting in, they can literally just keep putting games on. Look, they're not the ones that catch your eye if you're a casual gamer or whatever, but they fill up the thing. You can say, oh man, we have 400 games or whatever. And it's not 400 old ass games from the PS2, PS3 era, which that really does have a finite cap on it because you're talking about old graphics. You're talking about, things that people are like, oh man, I don't want to go back and play that. Right. Well, why are they remaking all these games? People don't want to go as much as how awesome Final Fantasy VII is. People don't want to go back to the PS1 and play that Final Fantasy VII. Why are they putting it on a mobile version of that looks cooler? Because people want to play the thing that looks cool. So yes,
they got to push their hardware. That's what it is. They got to push their hardware, and it's that's kind of the beauty of all this back and forth is like you have Microsoft with their hands in multiple pots, and Sony wants you to believe that they do too, but it's really one track for them. And it's the PlayStation.
Well, they're starting to get into the whole now we got to do the live service thing, which that's the thing that I think could be a real big turner of, dude, if those live service games go the way of some other live service games have been going, they could really go the other way quickly.
And the thing is that the live service game style is a mature genre. You have to, the amount of breaking in you have to do, once again, it's that diffusion of innovation. Who you got to get to hit that market penetration of 15 to 30%? Who are you getting? You're not going to get the early adopters because they already invested all that time into other games. Fortnite. How are you going to get the Fortnite gamers off? You're not pulling them from their game. They already have sunken cost. How do you get the World of Warcraft gamers, the Final Fantasy 14 gamers, the Destiny players?
Yeah, you got Bungie, and are you going to get Bungie people to get off Destiny to start playing Marathon?
And from what I understand, Destiny 2 is kind of in a rough place content-wise because Bungie's A team was taken off, and this is coming to me through very legitimate sources. Bungie's A team has been pulled off of Destiny, and they've been put on to Marathon. So you're competing with yourself now. Like what you're going to release 10 live service games between now and I think that's like now and like 2 years from now or something like that. I don't remember.
2 to 3,
2 to 3 years, 10 to 12 live service games, and you're competing with yourself. You're giving people way too much choice, and this choice is a good thing, but when you give too much choice, you get choice paralysis.
And you have one company that's supposedly looking over everything, and it's like, do you really want just one company looking over everything? Because they have a certain style of live service game that may not work for everybody. If you try to turn every live service game you have into that, it's not going to do great either.
And the thing is that people are so limited on time, and your audience that has lifted you up so far, they're older now. This is the one thing Blizzard understood with World of Warcraft. Their user base is older now. The people who played it back in 2004 when it first launched, I'm going to be 37. Like I don't have the time I used to have when I was, 19 playing that game. I don't. If I play it, I'm playing maybe a couple hours a week, if that. But besides that, Diablo 4 came out. Seasons haven't started, but there's a lot of controversy behind it already about how they're going to implement how this system works. And I can't put time into filling out a battle pass for all these games. I have to pick one.
Not so much you're paying for all of them as well.
Yeah. Sure. Oh, $10 here, $10 there. It doesn't seem like a big deal because I'm older and I have money now. But you have these people who are they're younger and they're getting into modern gaming. They might have time, but they don't have money. So what are you what are you
that's the problem we're getting with the streaming services as well. It's starting to get to the point where it's like, people don't want to keep paying more and more prices for the amount of content that you're giving. And then when you try to overproduce the content, guess what you have to do? You start having to pull it off. So that's the thing with gaming is then what ends up happening? They end up killing the live service game because they can't afford to keep it running with the amount of the small amount of people that are playing it. And that's the thing is also, I think it makes a point of why Microsoft is doing their thing of saying, look, we could take forever trying to make our own games, or we can come and buy Activision-Blizzard and get an easier ticket into places where we aren't strong. Right?
Exactly.
And right now the FCC is trying to block the deal with that injunction or whatever. Like, where do you sit on that deal? Do you think are you in that state of like, I'm worried? Oh my God.
Oh man. I know people who work for Blizzard, personally.
Okay.
And I worked for Microsoft. So the thing is with me is that Microsoft is very serious about their work ethic when it comes to having a positive work environment. As we all know, Activision did have some trouble, with Activision-Blizzard had some trouble with sexual assault and allegations and those terrible stories that came out about 2 years ago, I want to say it's been. And when I read those stories, and like my heart sank. It was very hard to root for this company, a company that I loved and spent most of my life with. And what I know about Microsoft, and I know like if they were absorbed, the humanity aspect would go up so much more, because when I worked for Microsoft, there was a sexual allegation case that happened while I worked there with a manager that I had. And they take that super seriously. I am talking secret meetings, talking to lawyers, the whole nine. They take it super seriously. They do not mess around with that. So I don't care that I really, when it comes to like major corporations, the only thing I'm scared about is that if they do get absorbed, that a lot of people will lose their job, because the jobs they have would be, they wouldn't be relevant anymore because the business has absorbed the other, which is a thing that does happen. That's my only worry. I want people to have a positive work environment, and I know Microsoft can give it to them. On the other hand, I don't want people to get fired if their job is no longer needed. But I think that aside, I think just on the humanity aspect, I want it to go through. I don't care about Diablo on Game Pass. I don't care about World of Warcraft on Xbox. I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't like Bobby Kotick. I don't like him at all. I think he's a terrible human being.
I want to know who does.
I don't think Variety apparently, or somebody. Someone, whoever wrote that article 2 weeks ago. I think he's a terrible human being. If there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that. And I don't want to see him employed. I don't want to see him in charge of people anymore. Yeah,
and that's the only way. It's
the only way to do it, because that guy's not leaving unless someone hires someone. But like, that's my take from the whole case, because I otherwise I don't care. Like I got no skin in that game.
I mean, I think it would be. I personally don't like the games that I like from Activision. I don't know if they're gonna like Crash will probably keep going, and so will Spyro, because we know Phil Spencer's mentioned that. I'm one of those people that likes. I love Guitar Hero and Rock Band. Like, I don't know that Phil Spencer's going to bring that back, because I really don't know what you could do with that at this point. That's going to make it relevant for people, of my daughter's age and forward. But I just want to see those studios separate and not only work on Call of Duty and get to do stuff that they want to do.
Exactly.
Right? Have the freedom that you see Bethesda and all these other studios, like NXile, getting to work on that Clockwork Revolution game that looks amazing. Like, can you imagine Toys for Bob getting to work on maybe something that's not Crash or Spyro, like their own thing? Like, that would be amazing, So
Microsoft has the bones of a company that wants to produce good games and not abuse their workers and not create just Call of Duty 2023.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, just because we're on that subject, just really quick, any thoughts on the Embracer thing? Like that just made me so sad for everybody that works there.
Yeah. It's never a good thing when the media outlets and the media companies start consolidating their reporters and the coverage, especially when you see a really big situation happen and you need readers, you need solid writers to talk about it. And that's as a freelancer myself, it's really rough to see people let go because now they're starving.
Right.
They just had a solid job. They're let go. Now they have to fight with other freelancers to get paid, and it's just a terrible situation. It's really terrible, and the media world has seen a fair amount of losses within the last 2 years, and it's no matter how you look at it.
It does. It really makes me sad that's the route that things have gone, and then you bring in AI into this, and it's like, oh god, that could really drive a wedge.
Yeah.
So
the only thing you really do is not. See, it sucks because it's a catch-22. Do you not read the content coming from these companies anymore, knowing that the people who are still there are also going to lose their job, or do you continue to read what they have? And the only answer I have is like find these people on social media, and if they have like a Ko-Fi or something, like throw $5 at them. That's all I can say.
For sure.
That's all I can. That's the only thing that I can think of, because there's so many people out there who have been like, who've tweeted like, "Hey, listen, if I don't have a job in 3 months, I'm getting kicked out of the country." Like,
that's the worst ones too. Like that I've seen people just like, "Oh, I lose my visa, I have to go back, and I have nothing over there." Like,
yeah, this is the terrible reality of letting good people go. And then like I feel guilty for like trying to pitch something when I know there's some good I already have a job. I don't need to be pitching other articles knowing there's people who are also pitching who don't have a job. They don't.
Right.
They lost everything. I feel guilty doing that, and I can't. So I've laid off of that for a while and been trying to make other work happen over at Season Gaming for that exact reason. So
and that's why we got to promote and continue to help with remote work, because all these people that have to come over here because you're forcing them to go to an office where they could work from home and do the same thing, especially with writing. Like,
you don't get something twice. I went back to my office. I do not like it. So.
I bet, right? So just to end things here, even though we know what everybody's buying this week, it's Final Fantasy 16 for sure. But there is some other stuff. Speaking of Towards Survival, Crash Team Rumble, that online party game comes out. It actually, like right now, you could go buy it right now, pretty much as you're listening to this. Aliens Dark Descent game, which I thought looked cool when they showed it off at the Game Awards, comes out also. It's an RTS in the Aliens universe. And then you get some indie stuff. Super Meat Boy is coming back, but in Puyo Puyo form, with Dr. Fetus, the Mean Meat Machine. There's a first-person airship-based survival game, Forever Skies. It's also coming to PC and PS5 and Xbox. And then that Fire Emblem, which is technically Fire Emblem 7, is hitting the Nintendo Switch Online.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too. One.
So get ready, everybody. If you're not hyped already, Final Fantasy 16 week in a few days. Thank you so much, Steve. No, this was such a awesome conversation to have. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you for having me.
Hopefully we can have you on again. I don't know if you want to promote yourself or anything.
Sure. You can find my work along with other talented writers over at seasongaming.com. You can check out the live podcast that is played every Sunday, I believe, at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, called the Bitcast, where we have Ains, Dan, good old Richard Hogue, and Travis from IGN, Tie Guy Travis. You might know him as. They're always streaming every Sunday with their Bitcast. You can find me online on Twitter at Steve Esposito SG. If you can find me on I'm also on TikTok, where I talk about computer stuff. That is on, I believe, Agitated Stove. I should have prepared that one. And yeah, that's about all my little bits. Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, if you enjoyed what you heard here with Steve, Mark will be back soon, I think. But we're still going to be having guests, hopefully, every week or two. And if you like what you heard, you can always subscribe. Video Games to the Max on the YouTube channel. You can, if you hit follow, subscribe there, you get not just what we do here, Video Games to the Max. You get the Router Broadcasting folks, which I'm sure they have the Transformers review already in the can there on Dammy Hollywood, or Todd the Keiki doing anime, and all the other folks there. You can also listen with your ears on podcasts, search Video Games to the Max, and we'll be there. So, yeah, thank you so much, Steve. And we'll see you next week, everybody. We'll definitely be talking Final Fantasy 16. Later.